Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your relationship without your man's conscious effort so that you feel desired and taken care of and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm talking about the number one indispensable practice for a lasting marriage. Within the first year of marriage, my guest Liz's husband told her he was already thinking about other women, and he felt marrying her was a mistake. She struggled with anger and depression in her 14-year marriage while her husband continued to be on the fence the whole time. But today things are light and easy when they're together, and her husband comes home more, is quick to fulfill her desires, and they enjoy extremely passionate physical intimacy. She's going to tell us exactly what she did to cause a 180-degree change in her marriage, so you can do it too. And then I'll be giving out the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award, which is about how to make sure your partner isn't micro-cheating. I can't wait to make fun of this silly but sensible sounding suggestion. All that is coming up, but first I want to share the number one indispensable practice for a lasting marriage. Here's a pop quiz. How would you rate your self-care right now on a scale of 1 to 10? Is it a 7 or higher? Are you ridiculously happy? Or are you down in the 3 to 4 range today? Take a moment to think about that answer right now. Whenever a student tells me that she's having a lot of conflict in her relationship or feeling hopeless about it, that's one of the first things I ask her. How are you doing with making yourself happy? Sometimes she hasn't had the time to do much for her own enjoyment. I mean, that happens to all of us sometimes. That happens to me. But it turns out that making myself happy is the number one most indispensable practice for keeping my relationship healthy and happy. So that's the first thing I ask when I'm talking to a student whose relationship feels stressful and conflict-ridden. And you might be wondering what the connection is between self-care, making yourself happy, and a strong relationship. But if my husband is bugging me, that's usually because I'm tired or I'm hungry or I just am overwhelmed or I haven't had any fun for a while. When my resources are low like that, things can look really dark. And since my husband happens to be there, right there, just living with me, I tend to think it's probably his fault. I know, not terribly rational. I know, but as a mere mortal woman, I seem to have this impulse to blame him and roll my eyes. Like that's going to help. Of course, it's up to me to shore myself up with some home improvement shows or a nap or by catching up with a friend on the phone. And then, and only then, do I have the reserves that I need to show up as my best self. And then my husband doesn't seem so bad. In fact, then he seems pretty sweet and funny, handsome. And then I forget what I was irritated about. One way to give yourself the benefit of having those reserves is to proactively do at least 3 self-care activities or non-activities every day. It could be something as simple as taking time to read or going for a walk or just calling a friend. The point is to do something for yourself every day to nurture your own spirit, something for frivolous fun. And just as a flight attendant will instruct you to put on your own oxygen mask before helping others, self-care works on the same principle. You can't give to others and take care of them if you aren't taking care of yourself. Sometimes it seems counterintuitive in the moment. Like your kids need your help with something, or there's a big work project due. And it just doesn't make sense that the most urgent and vital thing to do next is to watch a cat video, for instance. But in my experience, that courageous act of taking care of yourself first can make everything seem so much better, including your marriage. Regularly doing your self-care activities goes a long way toward making you more relaxed and all around happier, which creates less stress and irritability in your relationship. Instead of fighting about how to address the unexpected plumbing problem, you and your husband laugh about it. Instead of feeling irritated by his pile of dirty laundry on the floor, you're still glowing from your long talk with your sister and you ignore it. In other words, when you feel good, things have a greater chance of going smoothly. That's because self-care is not selfish, it's self-control. If you're feeling frazzled or tired or frustrated with your husband, shifting your focus from whatever is driving you crazy to your own happiness and rest, it takes some effort. But by taking care of yourself, you not only gain a fresh perspective, you're also showing others, like your husband, how to treat you well. And as an added benefit, removing yourself from whatever is causing you stress can open up the space for your husband to be your hero. I often hear students report that while she went out for a walk, the husband got the kids to do their homework, or that he fed, bathed, and put them to bed while she was out with a friend, or that he straightened the house while she was taking a nap. Even if none of that happens, the empowerment she feels from knowing how to make herself happy no matter what else is happening around her is priceless. If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. Within the first year of marriage, my guest Liz's husband told her he was already thinking about other women, and he felt marrying her was a mistake. She struggled with anger and depression in her 14-year marriage while her husband continued to be on the fence the whole time. But today, things are light and easy when they're together. Her husband comes home more, he's quick to fulfill her desires, and they enjoy extremely passionate physical intimacy. She's going to tell us exactly what she did to cause a 180-degree change in her marriage. Liz, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for having me, Laura. It's great to be here.
So let's go back to the beginning. Tell us what things were like in the bad old days.
Oh gosh, the bad old days. I mean, when you say it like that, it sounds like it was a long time ago, but it was really up until recently. And it wasn't just this short period of time that we overcame. This was 14 years it took for things to change. And I just remember even on our honeymoon, I had no idea how to handle conflict. And one night I just stormed off. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't tell my husband where I was going. He had no idea where I was or when I would be back. And I just really struggled with rage and many just reacting in all the wrong ways. And it was from the get-go. I mean, it was on our honeymoon. So about a year into our marriage, I knew I had to change something. We were already starting to have kids. So there's added stress on top of just two people coming together. And I started to go to therapy. And I felt like I was improving and I felt like I was starting to make changes. And my husband, he came to me and he just said he wasn't sure if he could do this anymore. And he said, I'm having thoughts about other women. And part of me was grateful that he was that honest with me. And part of me wished that he wasn't so honest with me. It was really hard to hear that when I felt like I was improving and making changes. Mm-hmm. So that kind of pattern continued for several years. I dove deep into personal development and trying to get better. I started to let go of a lot of things. I realized how controlling I was, and therapy helped me to let go of that and focus on myself and improving myself. So I let go of what he ate. Eventually, I let go of how he spent his time, how he handled finances. And I let go of a lot of things, and I felt like I had come pretty far. And I remember I was pregnant with baby number 5. And I thought, we're in a good place. This is great. We're moving on. And he he said that he was excited for this baby. Of course, he's a great father and he loves being a dad. It's the reason why I held on to the marriage for so long. And he said, but he wasn't sure about us.
Oh, ouch. Devastating.
He said, I still don't know. I still don't know if I want to be in this relationship. And I got so upset after he left the room. I picked up a chair and I threw it against the wall.
Yeah.
So some things hadn't changed in my rage and in my anger, and part of me felt really justified.
Yeah.
And, I felt guilty for bringing in another child into this broken marriage. We were 5 kids in, and I felt guilty as a mother for doing that. And then part of me was extremely hurt and rejected. And I just thought, all these years, I thought if I could just get good enough, he would finally love me. He would finally commit to me. And it wasn't enough. And then I still dealt with my own issues on top of that.
It sounds, it does sound incredibly hurtful and rejecting and lonely, and exhausting, because I remember that feeling too, of like, if I just get good enough, then I can be loved. And that's not really what any of us wants. We just want to feel desired for being ourselves, feel loved for being ourselves. So I really hear the pain that you were in.
Yeah, there were times where I just thought, can't he just love me for who I am?
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
And I felt like that's what I was trying to provide for him. And if he could do that for me, then that would probably help with my anger issues,
Yeah.
I finally feel safe and loved and
yeah.
things.
It does go a long way. I remember, when I was raging, it was like that really scared little girl underneath that was kind of running the show, running the steamroller, I guess, around town and kind of rolling over everybody. So it is a scary, scary thing.
Yeah. And he always said, there's a certain, he was always very caring. He always took care of me during these years. I mean, he never walked out despite my rage. He was always there to pick up with taking care of the kids if he knew I needed time away. But he always said, there's a certain feeling when two people love each other that should be there. And we're missing that. And he said, we had no foundation. There was nothing to fall back on.
Oh, terrifying. Awful.
Yeah, it was really scary. I thought he could leave anytime. And there was nothing for him. There was nothing for him keeping me here. And I felt like that was unfair because I knew what marriage was like from my parents. They fought all the time. That's just what you do in marriage,
This is what you do. This is how it is.
We were going to do it better. We weren't going to fight as much as they did. And we would make connections with our kids to make sure that we cultivated a safe place. But I knew that marriage was going to have its challenges. And there were going to be times where you just argue.
So did you ever think about leaving him when he was saying these hurtful things?
I did. And in fact, it was never the right thing for me to leave him. I felt like it was unfair because he knew I would never leave. I'm completely loyal. That was one of his complaints, that I was more loyal to the institution of marriage rather than him. And I sometimes felt used a little bit. I wondered if I was enabling him because he knew that I would never leave. So he never had to commit back to me. And I remember he, shortly after, maybe like a year after our 5th one was born, he got deployed to go overseas. And we were still in this state of limbo. And I thought, what am I doing this for? He's going overseas. I'm taking care of 5 kids by myself. They're little. It's stressful. I still have my personal issues. And what is it all for? Just for him to come back and then leave me and decide he's done. And I was so scared. I made so many decisions out of that fearful place. I remember telling him, don't come home unless you're committed. then it was time for him to come home. And he said, that's not fair. I haven't seen the kids in a year. And I thought, well, that's a good point. For the kids, we're trying to be sensitive to them.
Yeah.
So he came home and was home for about a month or two. And I just gave him an ultimatum. Okay, you have to decide by this date. And it was, I knew there needed to be a change. I didn't know how to do it. And I had just kind of given up, and out of sincere love for him, I said, you're not happy here. I will always be here, but I want you to do what helps you to be happy.
Wow.
So if it means that we're splitting up, that's fine with me. I will still love you. We will co-parent. And he felt the same way. So it came time to make this decision. The day came, and he ended up deciding to stay. And he said something very tender to me. He said, what if I just loved you the way I always wanted you to love me? And I thought, wow, all this time, it was just me that needed to change, to let go of that control, to give him a chance to just be himself and love him for who he was. And he was humble just like that. He started giving me kisses in the kitchen. There was a long time where he would shudder at my touch because, and I can understand, because I was raging inside our home, but I never showed that side of me to anyone else. So he did the math. He was the common denominator. It was him. We weren't supposed to be together, but that changed that day. And I would kiss him every time I left the house and kiss him every time I returned. It was just really so many things that I wanted for years started coming back.
Wow. That's great.
It was great. It was great for 2 to 3 months. And then he got an opportunity to go overseas again.
Voluntary deployment.
Yeah. He left again. And he started texting, we started messaging, and he was telling me things I had always wanted to hear. And meanwhile, I was still struggling. I was still struggling being home with the kids by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I would reach out to him. He was my best friend. He was my go-to. And I would say, it's really hard. And I would kind of vent to him. And he would just be quiet. And I thought, wow, he's finally listening to me. He's finally getting it. And I wouldn't know until later how much it had hurt him and how much he was hurting inside, to be hearing those things and worrying about the kids and worrying about my past with anger and whether or not they were being affected by it. And just feeling like, Laura, you talk about heart messages. That was a huge, huge aha moment for me. I consider myself a great listener. And for 14 years, I never once gave that to my husband. Well, I can think of a few instances, but it wasn't the typical. His heart message is, I am here away from the family, providing for the family so that you can be home with the kids. That's all I ever wanted, was to be a stay-at-home mom. And that was something that would come later after I was introduced to the skills. So he came home after being gone for a year. It was in the middle of COVID. So he went to a hotel first because that was the recommendation. He was coming in from another country. And I texted him, and we were making plans to do family pictures, or I was. And he said, there's something I need to tell you before, and it has to do with the future of our family. And my heart just sank. Wow. I was looking forward to him coming home and us starting afresh, with our new relationship and just picking up where we left off when he left. And I met him at the hotel one night. I can feel all the feelings. I can see where we sat on the couch by the pool. And he just opened up to me and told me some things that were really hard to hear. I prepared myself for the worst, and I feel like that's what I heard. But the hardest thing for me, aside from the rejection and hurt, which was very real, and that would be something that I would overcome the next few months, um, was hearing how much he hurt and hearing that I still wasn't getting it right. And I just thought, am I ever going to be good enough for the marriage I desire? Do I just not deserve this?
Oh, wow. So that's what he wanted to tell you, that he was hurt.
Well, he was hurt. He didn't know about our future together. He felt like it was time to let things go. He had made some decisions that probably weren't the best when he was overseas. And I just felt like it was because I wasn't a good enough wife.
Oh, awful. Awful. Liz, that sounds really devastating, really heartbreaking.
And embarrassing too.
Yes. Oh, poor thing. It's very hard. And you probably felt so alone with it.
Yeah.
It's not something you want to tell anybody else is going on in your marriage.
Yep.
So what happened?
So gratefully, I had just met this lady through a group from church. We had taken a 10-week course together and had just finished right before he came home. And she said, I know your husband's coming home soon. She had experience with her husband working out of the house and him going back and forth and the challenges that come with that. And she said, let me know how it goes. And I texted her the next night, and this was after, I kind of let my pain have its day in the sun, but in all the wrong ways. I texted all the wrong things to my husband. He was still at the hotel. And that next day, I listened while he told me, and I was calm and reserved, but I guess all of the pain and reality of it sunk in the next day. And I texted him all these just wrong things. And, how could you, why would you? And what about this? What about that? So gratefully that only lasted one day. And that night, my friend reached out to me, how's it going? And I texted her, it's not what I thought it was. It's not what I thought it was going to be. And immediately she called me. It was 10:30 at night, and she called me on the phone, and she had known about the skills. And I felt like I had a personal coaching session, and I was completely open and honest with her. And there were some things that really fit. Like, that makes sense. That makes sense. And there are some things like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, no way.
I've already tried everything. And anyway, she convinced me to get the book from the library. I listened to the book in a week. I told myself, I'm going to buy myself a new dress if I can finish this in a week. So I gave myself a reward to look forward to. Nice. I finished the book in a week. My husband got home, and we had already decided that he was going to take some time off work so that he could settle back in. He did end up coming home. At first, I told him not to, but my friend convinced me to change it completely. I let him back home. I let him back in the bed. I mean, I say I let him, still so controlling. And it was the best decision I ever made.
Oh, wow. So you reversed yourself. You'd said, hey, don't come home. And then what was your message to him after you changed your mind? How did you say that?
Oh, I don't remember. It was in a text, but it was kind of like what I had said before, don't come home unless you're ready to be here. And I think I just said, I'm sorry. I don't know. I thought it through, and I probably said something like that. I thought it through, and Christmas is around the corner. It's best if we just stay together and while we figure things out.
Wow. Okay. So he came home.
And we had a lot of time. We had a lot of time together, and I had a lot of time by myself. This was the first time, not the first time. I had plenty of support while he was gone. But there's nothing like the support of the other parent
Yeah.
who, will care for and love. And I can just pawn him off on him and not feel bad for doing it.
Yes. Yes.
So I dove deep into self-care. There were two main things that my friend told me to do every day. One was self-care, at least three things. And the second was give him gratitude. I was pretty good at gratitude. That was my strong point. But the more I did it, the more I saw my husband, the real him. And the more I began to appreciate things that I didn't appreciate before. And that's when that gratitude for him providing and working so I could stay at home with the kids. He sacrificed 2 years of being with the kids physically so that I could be with them and so he could provide a good life for us.
Mm.
And just the safety, it skyrocketed. The intimacy, it increased almost right away. We started having physical intimacy. We probably had more in that first month together than we had in the previous 14 years.
Wow.
And I loved it. I enjoyed it. I opened myself up to receiving, and I gave out of love for my husband. I gave from this place of pure appreciation for who he was.
Beautiful. And this is not nothing because you were incredibly hurt right before this. So I think as a mere mortal woman, and I know for me, I wanted him to hurt too when I was feeling really hurt. So it took quite a bit of humility for you to even welcome him back to your home after that level of hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. A few years ago, I don't know if I could have, or if it wasn't for my friend, I wouldn't have. I was already set on him not coming back.
Your story would be completely different.
It would be completely different. And, I listened to the skills, they fit, in all of my years of personal development and working on this marriage. I went to therapy, but it was always, there was always that spot for the other person.
Yeah.
You could go to therapy on your own and one person can make a difference, but there's still this kind of, look what you could have if your spouse was there with you. And the marriage books that I read, they had exercises for two people, and you could still do them by yourself. And that's what I would do. But they were for two people. So when I heard you talk about staying on your paper and really just focusing on you, your thoughts, your own desires, and letting go of anything your husband said or did, that was all on his paper. My husband mentioning divorce, that was on his paper. The choices that he made, that was on his paper. I finally found a program that supported me. That was what I was looking for, because I could not control my husband anymore. But there was still kind of this expectation, or, maybe I could if I could just get him to therapy. So it was such a relief. It was such a relief to find the skills. And it was really difficult. And thankfully, my friend was available. I called her, or she called me almost every day. She said, "What are your wins?" She got me to focus on the good things that I was doing. I would tell her my challenges and I would say, "He's doing this and he's saying this." And she said, "You know what? That does not sound like a man that's leaving."
Oh, she brought another perspective, right? Instead of letting you run away with your fears.
Yeah.
She was helping you find your faith.
She said, he's hurt and that stuff needs to get out. That pain that he feels needs to get out, and then he can let it go.
Oh, and that's like listening for the heart message in a way.
And a lot of duct tape.
Oh, yes.
There were some conversations where I literally bit my tongue so I wouldn't defend myself or try to defend myself.
Very good, Liz. Very, very good.
There were some conversations where I prayed in my heart so bad. God, you know what I'm trying to do here. Help me. And it came. Once you focus your sights on what you want to create, you're 10 times more likely to get there. My heart would be changed. My desire to defend myself and express my own hurt and pain, it let go. I was able to completely let go of it. It was like Christ was by my side and he said, "Oh, you're finally ready to let go of that pain. I'll take it from here and you can go on
Oh,
and hear the heart message and see your husband for who he is and receive who I've given you."
wow. Amazing. So was there a moment where you just thought, wow, this is really working?
You know, it was it was still a gradual change. We had all these wonderful things going. He bought me the sweetest gifts for Christmas. We spent a romantic night at a hotel. He took me out to this great restaurant for my birthday. And all the while he was saying things like, "Oh, I would still do this if we weren't together." So, I
Yeah.
kind of wondered, but there were little snippets that kept me going. And one of them was being able to go to bed every night with my heart filled with gratitude, even though my marriage was in
Mm.
this crisis. I felt so taken care of. And I felt like, wow, I'm really given everything that I need.
So you were spending a lot of focus on what you were focused on. You were being very intentional about it, right? That you were going to focus on what was going right instead of what was going wrong.
Yeah, I try to be that straight A student and I just live the skills to a T. I was going to do it right. I was going to
I
do it
love
right.
it. I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah. It makes a difference, right? You throw yourself into it and get an A+ in the skills class and you get to go to bed feeling, it sounds like grateful, calm, peaceful. Is
Yes.
that fair to say? Yeah.
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 Yeah. There were plenty of tears in between, but I had a coach. I had my friend to take them to,
Yeah.
and she would work through. She would hear my pain every time. But there was one time where I did notice that things really were changing. And that's when my daughter, she's a teenager, came to my husband and I and said, "I am so proud of you." This was about a month and a half after he got back. She said, "You guys have not fought once since dad's been home."
Wow. That's incredible. She noticed the
Practicing,
difference.
yeah, yeah, practicing the skills, that was the first thing that I noticed. There was no contention. It relieved my anger and my rage. I have no desire to do those things. Or if I have the smallest incline, I don't do those things anymore.
So, would you say that practicing the skills has cured you of raging?
Yes,
Wow.
completely. It was like I was putting together this puzzle and I had just a few pieces missing. I could not find them. And when
Yes.
I found the skills, they were the last pieces that I needed. And I
Yes.
can go back and see the progress that I've made, and anything that has contributed to that, I can now associate it with one of the skills.
Wow. So, this is amazing. It's true. You were on a self development program for many years. This wasn't the beginning of it, finding the skills, finding the book. And as a result, you were ready for them. They landed on fertile soil in a way, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Wow. And so, okay, so that's an incredible moment to have your daughter acknowledge, right? You must have felt like $1,000,000 when she said that.
Yes, because you worry as a parent how your marriage is affecting your children.
Sure. Yeah. So, what is your marriage like now?
What is it like? It's I laugh now.
You got a big smile on your
So,
face right now. As I asked you that question,
yes.
you started beaming.
I mean, he's just the man of my dreams. He makes the funniest comments, and I used to get so offended, but now I just laugh and I just think they're so funny. And um he's actually out of town right now because his dad was in town and he was going to drive him back home 5 hours away, and he found out I had an appointment in the morning that I couldn't take the kids to. So he said, "Well, one option is just for me to take all the kids with me." So he took all the kids with him just to drop off his dad and do some work out there. And so I have a couple days to myself, which is great. We're packing up house and we're getting ready to move cross country.
Wow.
And that's one of the things that I had thought when in preparation for coming onto this podcast was that this would just be the part one of my story, because there are still things that I would love to have.
Yeah.
I would love to have my wedding rings back. I would love to.
Where are your wedding rings? Where do you have them back?
Well, I gave them back to him, pre-skills, of course. And then after being introduced to the skills, and you know what it was? It was being part of the Ridiculously Happy Wives Club. That really helped me to maintain the skills, because all of a sudden I saw all these other women who had these challenges and were so brave in the way that they went about them. They're just my role models. And I, through attending the group coaching calls and participating in the Facebook group, I thought that was the worst thing, to give my rings back to my husband. And I heard his heart message when I asked for them back, of how painful that was for him.
Mm.
And I totally regret it. So I would love to have them back. I would love a redo of our proposal. I would love to, celebrate a new us and recommit to each other in front of friends and family. And I would love all of these things. And I look forward to all these things. And I also, if they don't happen, will continue to enjoy being married to the man of my dreams.
Oh.
In this moment, I feel completely cherished and desired. Before he left with taking all the kids, and, he had loaded them up into the van and had packed all of their clothes and had done all this preparation. And he paused to say goodbye to me. And we just had this really long kiss. And I have this man who's taking all these kids with him. He doesn't have to. And he's doing it, and he's still loving me. There's no resentment or I owe him, he's just gives me this long kiss. And yeah, I feel adored and really taken care of and cherished. And, I never thought that was even possible. My goal was just to have a better marriage than my parents. And I knew there'd still be some arguing, But once I started listening to your podcast, I thought, yes, that's what I want. Wait, people can have that? Really? How? Tell me.
Yeah, you were hungry for it. So it does sound, I really hear you that, like, there's still more to go. You don't have your wedding rings right now. And you gave them back like before you knew any better, right? No one had ever taught you what you know now. But I don't hear you feeling afraid your husband's going to leave. Is that right?
Yeah. And part of that is because a month into the Ridiculously Happy Wives Club, which is one of your programs that my friend highly recommended, and everything she told me worked. So I just learned to do what she told me. So when it opened up, I just, signed up right away. I expressed a desire to enter coach training. Wow. And now I'm in coach training, just finished section 1, which is 12 weeks of diving deep into the skills. And I had no idea the value of this program. I knew that I would get private coaching. I was looking forward to that. I didn't know that I was going to get 5 other classmates who were all-star coaches themselves. And I would have partner coaching at my fingertips. I could receive coaching. I could give coaching and feel good about adding value to another woman. These women are the best of the best. And I get to take them all with me as I travel across country. We're making this big move across country. And through those first 12 weeks, I learned to let go of my husband's story about our relationship and just make it mine. And my story is that I am happily married to my husband. I told him the other day, I'm going to keep falling in love with you until the day that I die.
Wow, Liz, that is so amazing. So you're writing your own story. You're the author of the story of your marriage. It's not getting told to you. You're creating it day by day. And it sounds like you're writing a wonderful, romantic, passionate, laughter-filled relationship for yourself. And I hear like there's going to be this romantic proposal with your rings back, and maybe a ceremony to reaffirm your vows in the future. That's part of this story that you're creating that you would love. And I hear you being married to a man who sounds like he just wants to make you happy, making sure you can get to an appointment, taking 5 kids on a 5-hour drive. Or yeah, so it sounds amazing, and you're glowing. You're just glowing as you talk about this. So, and I give you all the credit for being willing. It takes courage. It takes courage and a lot of commitment to get where you got from where you came. It sounds like you're not letting the pain go to waste. You're now full of purpose for serving other women who are also hurting.
I am. And I couldn't do it without the support of my friend who was my personal coach in the beginning. I made great headway because of those daily calls. I couldn't do it without the support of the women in the Ridiculously Happy Wives Club. And now the support of these fellow coach trainees. I get to take them with me across country. And so of course, I'm going to stay grounded in the skills. Of course, these changes that I've been trying so hard to make over 14, now almost 15 years, well, of course they're going to stick because I have that support.
Yes. Yeah, I feel the same way. I'm here for the support also, so that the changes stick. And I don't miss being a rager. And it sounds like you don't either, but you'll never go back. Why, you'd never go back. So what would you say to somebody who's maybe where you are, where you were, where her husband's saying, I don't know, we don't love you, I don't love you. I don't know if we can make it. Maybe I should leave. I'm good with this kid, but I'm not good with us. I mean, awful, hurtful things, right? And she wants to have what you have now, where he's wanting to make you happy and giving you long, passionate kisses before he leaves for a road trip with all the kids. What's your best tip for her?
Don't give up. Don't give up on your dreams. Your desires are more powerful than you know. And as you hone in on them, and they're not just some sweet treat being dangled in front of your face that you can't have. They're there for a reason. They're because you are meant to have them. Focus on them. Focus on the good. Receive with gratitude the good things that are going your way. Because the more you focus on what's happening that's good, the more likely you are to create more of it. And definitely get support. We're not meant to do this alone.
No, we're not. Plus, it's so much more fun to be all together, right? And get to share the stories.
Oh my gosh, it's a blast.
It is a blast, right? It's like the thing I never knew I needed was to be around all these amazing women, like you say, the best of the best. And what's your message for yourself? If you could go back and talk to Liz from before, what would you like to say to her that you know now?
I thought about this before I got on the call because I'm familiar with your podcast. And I would think about it while I was listening to your podcast. What would I say when I was on there? And I would just say, keep doing what you're doing. Trust that heaven has your back. Trust that this is meant to be. And your husband, he approaches finances differently. He approaches parenting differently. He approaches sex. He approaches, relationships, all the things differently. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that is what helps you know that you're going to have a great marriage, is because of those differences. They're actually complements. They complement your weaknesses and they fill in the gaps. And it's meant to be that way.
Mm-hmm. That's inspiring. That's moving. And it's beautiful. I just want to commend you so big, Liz, for saving your family. Like 7 people are living in it sounds like a much more peaceful home that your teenage daughter acknowledged you for. How do you think this has affected the other kids?
Ooh, I don't know. I don't know if I'll see those effects for a little bit. We're just starting to steer the ship a different direction. But I, actually, I have been in the house and in instances where I know that my children felt unsafe. And now I know that they feel safe. They feel secure. They can go to mom, they can go to dad. Both are always going to be there for them. And the biggest difference, I think, is between my older children who experienced the bad old days and my younger children. My daughter, we were at an outdoor mall together, and my husband relayed this experience to me. He was sitting on some chairs outside while I was in the store. And my youngest daughter, she's about 4 years old, just the cutest thing. She was singing and dancing, and he was playing with her. And there was a man sitting near him. And my husband and I had swapped out of the store, so he had seen us both interact with our kids. And while I was in the store, he got up to leave. But before he left, he turned to my husband and said, "These children do not want for love and affection."
It's like the best thing you could hear about yourself as a parent.
Yeah.
Right?
And
it's
how
a big
grateful am
compliment.
I for these skills as my oldest is entering the teenage years. I'm so grateful to have these skills.
Do you use your skills with her too?
Oh, definitely. I apologize a lot. I always have, but now I know where to go after I apologize, and I know to be more intentional about expressing gratitude, you talk about spouse fulfilling prophecies, where you say something that kind of feels like a lie. Maybe you're thousands of dollars in debt and you tell your husband that he's great with money, something like that. That's just an example. So I use child fulfilling prophecies, and I catch my kids doing something right. When they're getting along, I tell them, "Wow, you guys are getting along so well. You guys are such good friends. We're going to make a great team." It's just so much more positive energy. And I think that you really need that in the teenage years. I don't consider myself yet a teenage parent, but or having had a lot of experience in that area, but I look forward to having that for them, being that, creating a safe space for them.
Yeah. So you're a more empowered mom from practicing the skills too. Yeah. Wow, Liz. Well, amazing, inspiring, beautiful, moving. I am so grateful for you coming on and sharing so authentically, especially the heartbreak that you went through. That is part of your stained glass window, I call it, right? Like all the little broken pieces are put together, and now it's something beautiful. And it's just such a gift that you shared it with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura.
If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. And now it's time for the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award.
It's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice of the week.
And the advice I find most counterproductive this week was sent to me by one of my coaches. And I want to thank you so much for sending this in because it is truly terrible. And I love that you are contributing to the podcast this way. It really helps me out. So big shout out to you. Mwah. This rotten advice was written by a love and relationship coach, but definitely not one of our coaches. And it was published in a major newspaper. And it says that if your partner does things like liking and commenting positively on an attractive person's social media profile, or if he texts with someone attractive or socializes with an attractive coworker, he may be, get ready for this, micro-cheating, especially if this is kept secret from the spouse. This article goes on to say that if you observe your partner doing any of these things, you should, quote, make a time with your partner to have an open conversation about your concerns. In other words, let him know he's bad and wrong. You're going to criticize him. See, I thought they were going to say that if you observed your partner doing any of these things, then you were probably focusing way too much on your partner's paper instead of being on your own paper where your power is, and that you should maybe check to see if you are neglecting your own life. Like it's kind of like a car going down the street and no one's at the wheel. And I also thought they might give some kind of warning that by dwelling on this concept of micro-cheating, you are choosing your fear that your partner might cheat over your faith, that he's loyal, trustworthy, and that what you focus on increases. And I was going to say, oh, that makes total sense. And maybe even makes it less ridiculous and mystifying that they made up a sinister name like micro-cheating for perfectly innocent things that people do when they're alive. But I didn't see that in the article anywhere, which is a shame because what a dangerous dark alley someone could end up going down by focusing on micro-cheating, right? I mean, I can see this temptation for sure. The premise is there that if you notice these micro-cheats and then you set some boundaries or some ultimatums or some boundamatums, maybe if you had a State of the Union address about it, that you could prevent the cheating, right? But in my experience, focusing on what you're afraid will happen just backfires reliably. And choosing to focus on your faith, which you can do instantaneously, when you use this little hack, I'm going to show you right now, right? You notice fear coming up? What do? Well, you treat that like an emergency because it is an emergency because you're focused on the wrong thing, the thing you don't want to experience. So you want to drop and do 10 gratitudes immediately. Drop and do 10 gratitudes. Making a gratitude list immediately for his loyalty and trustworthiness is a much more effective way to create the outcome you're wanting instead of contributing to the outcome you don't want. Focusing on how your partner might be betraying you is also disrespectful. It's expecting the worst. And he's going to pick up on that. So instead of looking in your eyes and seeing a reflection of himself as a trusted, loyal person, if he sees your doubt and suspicion, it's not going to be so fun to look into that mirror anymore. Your unwitting spouse fulfilling prophecy to him is, you're going to cheat on me, or you are cheating on me. And people tend to live up to our expectations for them. And you might be thinking, but what if he really is micro-cheating? What if you're suspicious because he really is doing things to make you suspicious? Well, that could certainly be the case. Really could. But isn't it true that he's also doing things to demonstrate his devotion and loyalty to you? And sure, those might seem smaller. Those might be harder to find. But which one would you rather focus on and therefore experience more of? Right? The loyalty and the devotion. Me too. For that reason, this advice to Make a time with your partner to have an open conversation about your concerns that he is micro cheating is the very, very worst relationship advice I've heard all week. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week is all about how to keep drama out of your relationship. In the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that when I see the words, your login or password is incorrect, I always think, at least tell me which one.